Okay, welcome everybody to our third session of our Ask the Expert series. And I am absolutely delighted, probably 12 months from the first time that we actually talked about doing this interview, to welcome Ros Maindok from Equine Functional Solutions. It's great to have you here, Ros, so thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me, Penny. Like I said, we talked about it for a long time, but now we're finally doing it.
Yep, the best things come to those who wait, as they say. So the first question that I'd like to ask you is basically just, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and your business?
Sure. So Equine Functional Solutions, I started off with it was therapy based, where I'd come out and see your horse and do massage and all that sort of thing, and red light therapy. But now it's more evolved into more of a consulting side of it, where I like to put all the things that I've learnt over the time and the teaching skills into where I can help the owner find some solutions for their horse, because it's never only usually one thing. Sure, my background is biomechanics and the red light therapy, but it's all the other little things that I've been journeyed along the time. So I know that it's never just one thing. And I like to work with therapists as well. So it's not like I'm out to, take anybody's business away from them, but having that extra knowledge to help the therapist when they get a bit stuck and, what can they see and all that sort of stuff. So that's where I'm about, helping the rider be more aware of themselves and how they function with the horse, as well as straight out biomechanics for the horse as well, and for the owner to be aware of what the horse is doing. So many times I see people saying, oh, that horse has got lovely movement, oh, that horse this, and I look at it, I'm going, sorry, not necessarily what we perceive as good movement is actually functional for them for the future. It may look flashy or wonderful now, but down the track, it's not actually what we're looking for.
Yeah.
How I got here was, of course, like everybody does, is have that horse that you go, okay, I really want to help you, or you have a few horses that just things are not going great. So you go off on a journey, and I did start with red light therapy about 10 years ago now, and went into that, and then I'm a Y person. So the next thing was, okay, well, how does all that work? And then also massage, and then I'll do Bowen, and then I did saddle fitting, and then I did just kept going and going. But one of the first things I did was science of motion. And it was actually Jess's fault from Equestrian Care. Sorry, Jess. She actually had a video in our course of this horse, the horse that could not trot. Now, this horse had seen every vet, therapist, whatever, had injections and everything, and it was still bucking and doing all this stuff at trot. Meanwhile, Jean-Luc gets on it, does all his rehab, horse is okay. I'm like, what's that dude doing? And then that went on, and that was 9 years ago. So it's just a forever journey, but it is very different. So I stood hidden for a long time, but now I'm ready to come out and help people with all their horses. So yeah, that's how it came about.
Yeah, and there's just a couple of things that I'd really like to kind of pull out of that. The first thing is that for, from what everybody's been saying, over the course of this series, both with Julian, with Michelle so far, and I'm very confident that Beth will be reiterating the same thing, is that it is just never one thing. Everything is so connected and so interlinked, so that looking at a problem in that kind of singular fashion is only ever going to be a band-aid or a temporary solution. So, this is where, this was my main real motivation for doing this series. And, we might do more and get more voices in on this story, because it's a story that needs to be heard. Because as you said, you're not taking the role of the regular therapist, or you're not, and with Julie's product, she's not taking the role of the farrier or the trimmer, but she's adding in, it's basically like adding in more tools to your arsenal to give your horse, the best possible life. And the other thing that I want to pull out just from what you said was also that awareness. Two things actually. One, the awareness of the rider of what they're doing and what they're creating. And I think sometimes, it's always easier to think, whether it's the person or the horse, it's them, it's not me. But having that kind of awareness for how our own personal, physical issues or limitations, how they're impacting on a horse, and providing real workable, solutions. So with your business being the Equine Functional Solutions, you're not just providing insight, you're providing solutions, but people have to be ready and willing to take on board what that actually looks like. And Beth, who's going to be doing our last session next week, one of the quotes I've pulled up, I've shared it a few times, was from her horse, because she does sort of animal communication as well as one of her, her many skill sets. But was that from her horse Indy, was that he was basically saying that, not a lot of humans have the patience for true rehabilitation. And he thanked her for having that patience. And when I heard that through her podcast, like even now, it still like gives me chills, because, I've had that experience. I know that you've had that experience with horses, with your horses. And, sometimes we have to take a step back, and we have to be, aware and conscious, and not self, destructive, but we have to have that willingness to actually work on ourselves, both from a mental level, which I think Beth will be more driving into next week, but also, like those physicalities of what we can be doing to help to support our horses. So so that's really awesome. And the same as with Michelle, and it's the same as with Julie. We can sit back, we can all sit back, and we can let the fear of judgment and all that kind of stuff stand in our way. But if we do that, then no one else can do what we as individuals do, or bring what we bring to the table. And we all need to be working together as that metaphorical village for the greater good of these amazing animals. So I'm very pleased that you're here and that we're having this conversation. And even though, like I said, it only took us a year, but anyway, okay. So let's move on to our second question. Now, what kind of problems so I'm there, I'm a horse owner, I've got a problem. And what kind of problems might I be experiencing that your kind of approach might be able to help me with?
Oh, look, most of the time, if you actually messaged me and said, oh, look, my horse has a problem, I would ask you 50 questions and probably get you to send me a video, because I'm actually looking, because what you say and what I see can be totally different. So you need to clarify that interpretation. So you might just come to me with, oh, my horse is bucking. Hello.
Sound.
Have you?
I've lost your sound. I don't know why.
I think it should be all right.
It just suddenly just went away.
Can you hear now? Can you hear it?
What I'll do is I'll just pause the recording.
So most people usually come with a something, like there's lameness, or there's bucking. I feel like I always say like a banana, you know, they're bending one way and not being straight. You might have a saddle fit issue, stirrups, you know, different lengths, laziness, the heads are coming up as it coming into jumps, short striding, over tracking, continual soreness, you know, all those sorts of things. And because, you know, they could be 50 million things. So I'm always going to have a look to see what your horse tells me. It's sometimes easier when I can be there to have a feel, because usually the body will tell me where a lot of the stress is at the moment. That doesn't mean that it's the primary cause, but that's just what the horse is telling me today in this moment. Yeah, so, and then the other thing, I'll just look at different things. So a lot of the time you're working with protections that are either physical or mental, and it's usually both, because they're going to protect a muscle imbalance or a discomfort that they feel. So you're going to have both those protections. So one of my jobs I like to do is to try to educate the owner on and how you see and you feel that as well. So that's the point where I might have to say, you know, like how Michelle was talking about, you may actually have to go and do some stuff together as a horse so that you can get past certain places. Yes, you might have a biomechanical fault at that time, but without just doing multiple sessions of body work continuously, you have to delve deeper into why the horse might be protecting themselves as well. So yeah, it goes a little bit deeper than just just those first few things. So what horses usually have is an overload issue. So it's like us, when we have something that starts hurting, it's usually because we're using it too much. And they have the same thing, but the difference is that it doesn't necessarily show up on an X-ray or an ultrasound yet, because they feel it as the discomfort, but they're telling us. So it's that education too, so that people understand. So and to see who's influencing who the most at that time. Some people, the horse gets them to do funky things. Sometimes the rider's able to straighten the horse, but then as soon as the horse goes back in the paddock, he's like, oh, thank God. I can just go back to what I want. Rehabilitation, how, you know, somebody says, oh, can you give me a set of exercises? And I go, well, I can't really, because I need to see how the horse takes those on board and how they interpret that, and how you interpret it, because it's no good doing the exercises if they're just you keep doing the same thing, because they will still want to protect it. It's just like if I say that to you, I will watch you do the exercise and I'll go, well, actually, you're not at that stage yet. You need to come back, and do this. So that's a lot of the other horses' issues, is they're not actually ready in balance and stability to be able to do what we want. And usually that's just walk.
So, and you know, it ties in well with you know, with what Michelle was talking about, in terms of, you know, that we really need to be listening and looking at what, you know, what the horses want. And I think so often, I come across it a lot, you know, that the horses will get labeled as being naughty or cheeky, or they just have this bad behavior, but the vast majority of the time that it's actually a communication of something is wrong. And that can be, you know, physical, it can be mental, it can be internal, it can be the speech, you know, it's and that's where, you know, I think with what we'll be talking to Beth about with her insight as well, is that really it's very much, you know, I know that her focus is very much about is really, you know, really on the horses, in terms of working out what's good for them at that moment in time, you know. So but it's interesting that you mentioned about the you know, the exercises, is that so often I think we want like the, you know, we want the magic recipe. Okay, my horse is this, I want it to not be this, so what do I have to do? And it's like, right, well, okay, you know, you can't just have this magic recipe. Like you said, you know, even with those exercises or with activities, there's an interpretation, there's why is the horse doing it in the first place. Like you said, if there's a mental block or some sort of issue there, or they are, like you said, they're protecting another part, then you know, so it just, I think one of the issues, not issues, but the complications of the work that you do is, and this isn't actually a question I've put on the list, but how do you cope with like people not getting overwhelmed? You know, do you find that people kind of get a bit overwhelmed by, oh gosh, you know, well, there's all this wrong, you know, like what's the point, you know, kind of thing. Do you ever come across that?
All the time. And it's hard because I know where we have to go, but at that time you sort of just have to point out. So say like when I do my assessments and things, I've got to start somewhere, and so I'll say, your horse is telling me it's hurting here at the moment. Let's have a look at you, have a ride, see what's influencing with that, and then sort of go from there, and then try to start the education for how the body actually does move and cope with gravity and external forces and all those really overwhelming things, because you need to understand those so that when you're doing the exercises, that it's not just a mechanical, you're like matching steps or something like that. It gets deeper than that, because you're actually communicating with the horse, because they're all asymmetrical, right? They all have a preferred dominance. And I'll say, your horse is overloading, say with Lexus, right foot. So if I let her keep doing that, she'll end up with one part of her will just end up saying, no, I've had enough. Or she'll swap it and do something with the rest of her body, because she'll feel that her right fore is getting too sore. So she'll swing her hip out or something like that to offload those sorts of things. Or the great one is doing this to get off, even though they still want to do it. So so it's teaching everybody how to feel that. So because it's every move that they do something, it's not just how can you say it, so defined so it gets overwhelming, but it's actually fun because your training sessions become so different, because you're actually working and then you go to say and then you feel the power instead, because they are so much more balanced. And what else I've noticed happens is they become more confident in themselves, because they don't feel like, my favorite word is your horse is going to face plant. It's trying to catch up with itself. So and then the horse becomes and it's like, I can do this.
So really looking at it as you know, we've been talking about having this arsenal of tools, but looking at it as this becoming a part of your training, you know, like another activity essentially to do together that is for the greater good and the betterment of the horse, you know, which fits in well with so Beth will be talking, I don't know exactly what she's going to talk about next week, but certainly within her new Focus app, she's got in there, you know, she's got, okay, what do you feel like doing there today? Do you feel like having a ride, or are you feeling a bit nervous today? Do you think you might, let's do an online, let's do a activity on the ground, let's, you know, so, you know, having that kind of flexibility, that it's not always about, you know, that specific kind of like goal, whatever discipline it is that you're working in, but adding this in as a basically, like you said, like rather than seeing it as a chore, seeing it as something that can be fun and relationship building, and working, it actually brings out that communication and that partnership, which is something that's going to be beneficial whichever way you look at it. So
one time I was at a little jump event, and we all know I jump about this high, and I was working with Lexus because she doesn't show she's nervous, but she does get nervous a little bit when we go out. So we were doing stuff that we do at home, and she knows the balance work. So we're just going along, and what I'm trying to do with her is say, stop loading out on your right fore, be a little bit more central, so that you use your left and a bit of lift. And so we're just doing that at the walk, and then I was doing little trot departs. Everybody around me is cantering around, going over jumps and doing all that, and they're going, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, we're just doing our balance work," because I know if I get her into that where she's more aligned and feeling that power, and we're working on her tendon recoil, we just went out, and then she will have a better jump, she will have a better trot, because she actually has more power from her recoil system.
Absolutely.
So it's just different.
It's not always, I think I definitely think that's something that I've learned over the years, is that it's not always about what we think it's about.
No.
Sometimes when we take a step back and we are actually working on something else, we can have the strength and the confidence and the ability to do things that we haven't even been working on, because we've been working on things at much more elemental level. So now
it's like a foundation.
I'm conscious of time, because we are.
Oh, sorry.
No, not at all. But I'm just thinking that what we might do is I'm just trying to see what our last question was. I think we'll go to our last kind of question, which was talking about your top tips, because that's kind of your top tips for making next season, whatever my discipline is, or not discipline, if I'm just trail riding or whatever, what are your top tips for making my 2022 a successful partnership for horse and rider?
Cool. Besides consider training, balance training, and not just fitness training, that would be a top tip, because balance is everything. You'll find that your horse doesn't want to, go like this as it's going into a jump, or
I've lost the sound again.
That the front end won't be
recorded. Okay, sorry.
Okay. For another top tip is consider that just because your horse has good conformation doesn't mean it's got good functional movement. That you can have good functional movement and good postural movement, which means that you've got less tissue degeneration. If you have bad conformation and bad movement, you're more likely to have tissue degeneration. But you can have bad conformation but good functional movement, and you're less likely to have tissue degeneration. So it's really important to think about biomechanics. What else have I got? That don't ever think it's one thing, like it's just the hooves, or it's just the saddle, or this. Ground force reaction, it shows in the hooves, and what the hooves proprioception says does send it back up to the body, but you can't fix one without the other. They both tell a story. Just thinking, I had so many things to say.
You might have seen Zoom just flashed up and told us that we're short on time. So.
And that they can be protecting an itis. So when you get tendonitis, that's what lower legs. And just remember that just because the engine is in the back end, if your front end is not strong, they are trying not to nosedive, because there's too much power in one end and not enough balance in the front end.
Balance and strength, So really, you know, just to wind up, because as I said before, Zoom did pop up, and I mean, we have had a few technical issues, so, you know, so that's a contributing factor. But you know, this concept of balance training, you know, as opposed to just training for, you know, for fitness, I think that for me, you know, that's really, like, as you sort of talk about the things that you go, okay, yeah, I get that. I get that. And
I'm an older person. Yeah, I'm an older person and I still play netball. I tell you what, since I've done more balance work, I play much better now than what I ever did when I was younger.
Yeah.
And
so,
no, you know, no injuries, and I'm not sore.
Yeah. And so I think, you know, and definitely that sort of, you know, like you can see, you know, with lots of horses, you know, especially like we obviously within polocross, you know, that you're asking a lot of those horses. So it's interesting to, you know, to take on board that concept and think, okay, so if those polocross horses, you know, had this additional element essentially added into their training, would you have less breakdowns? You know, would they pull up better for their Sunday games? You know, like all these sorts of things where you see it commonly. I'm sure you do in other disciplines as well. But you might find, like, this is where our equine recovery bars, you know, came in, was because you might have horses, they play really well on Saturday, and then by Sunday they just you know, which is when you got your finals, and, you know, lots of people have white line fever and want to win those bell boots, you know, that the horse just doesn't have, and they will be very fit horses. So this is really interesting to me, is I'm looking at it going, that could well be the missing link.
Yeah, so this is your thing. So look up biotensegrity. So you know, about your function fascia, the fascial system. This is why we do things slow as well, so that the body can adapt and change in a way, and neuro, because you want to create more neural pathways, so that they don't go back to habits. They're just doing it because they're fit and they can, but unfortunately they break down. So the balance and stability works to do with not breaking down in tissue.
Yeah. So, okay, well, I mean, we could literally sit here talking all night, and I'm having brain waves of how we're gonna build upon this, because, you know, like this is really, it's not just that it's really good stuff. This is actually, like, we need to get this, I don't know what you say, we need to get all this stuff integrated, you know, in a way that we can make things accessible and easy, and get them part of the conversation. Because I can, you know, I mean, I already know, obviously, you know, we have to take a holistic approach with our supplements and so on, because that is a big piece of the puzzle. But for me, you know, as a horse owner and as a horse lover, you know, I want to see the whole picture, you know, of everything that we can possibly do to make them
so
healthy and happy.
Interesting as it is, all the people that you've had on are the ones that, so I've gone to Michelle because I had a missing link in some of my training with Lexus. I was missing a couple of pieces, and I was like, oh, that's why I'm not progressing. Did some work with her. I'm like the Leroy person that she was talking about. I've been to you when we had some digestive issues and that. I've actually got the little things for the thrush. The little, the little balls.
Yep.
And I've done work with Beth because I'm an anxious rider and I need to learn to become more present so that I can focus to do the work that I need to do. So I'm telling you, it's definitely all definitely connected.
Yeah. Fantastic. All right, well, we're going to wind up before Zoom boots me off completely. So I would like to thank you heaps for your time tonight. It's been fascinating. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah, and for our viewers, you know, watch the space. I think we're going to be working on making 2022. Someone told me we were like, going to say 2022 is going to be a big year because that'll curse it. But I think there's going to be some really exciting integrations and partnerships and just really,
so.
you know, yeah, I think so. I know so. So it's like, it's already there. The universe has got it under control. So, all right. Thank you very much for your time tonight. And tune in next time for Beth. Cool.